All right, so thank you for tuning into Chomping at the Bit. This is episode number 94, and I guess before I get into it, I know it's been a while since I've actually, come in front of you to do an episode. Kind of busy with some other stuff, but I am saying that, with this episode, I'm going to get back, at least try to get back to doing 4 episodes a week. Well, at least 3 a week, but preferably 4, best case 5 episodes a week. So, like I said, it's been, I think, a couple of weeks, but felt like today was a good day to get back into the flow and do a new episode because before, I am getting close to 100 episodes, and to be honest, I have missed having the chance to come in front of you guys and talk about some sports topics. And plus I do definitely want to get back into it before the NFL draft next week, because next week I do want to do a lot of NFL preview type stuff where we'll talk about position groups and players to look out for, top prospects in each group, and even kicking around the idea of doing a mock draft for you guys of the first round and kind of see how that goes. But like I said, that's for next week. But what really made me pick today to come back and do a new episode was, seemed like over the past week or so, the social issues in sports lines have crossed yet again. And I know that it was, I think, a couple of months ago where I did an episode about that, but I felt like definitely had to do another one today because, like I said, once we learned about the trial with Derek Chauvin, I think that's how you pronounce his name, the officer in the whole George Floyd case, and we know that the George Floyd situation was a big deal amongst athletes. So the sports world, when closing arguments were made Friday, and then we learned on Tuesday around, I want to say around noon or something, that the jury had made their decision and we were going to learn about it and all that kind of stuff. You could tell that the sports world, along with the general population, had their eyes glued to their TVs based on that the jury's decision and what was going to come of it. So, of course, I do keep it to sports on here. I don't, get all political and all that kind of stuff. But what I did see was, as the case is becoming more and more, a higher profile within news outlets and all that kind of stuff, I was seeing a lot of people on like comment sections, or mainly comment sections, were kind of bringing up old arguments in terms of, talking about athletes once again speaking out, because we saw it with who was it? I mean, this time it wasn't even George Floyd. Wasn't the only topic. There was athletes talking about kind of like the anxiety that was kind of going on in Minnesota around the case, because there's a lot of people out there, and depending on which way the jury decided, it was probably going to set off some events one way or the other. And we saw the NBA alert their players and teams and I guess the sports media that, they were paying attention, and they have said that, if Chauvin was found not guilty or whatever, that they were expecting to, postpone 1 or 2 games on the schedule. I guess I should say like 1 or 2 days worth of scheduled games to, I guess, give players a chance to kind of step away and, take it all in and probably see from that point what steps they want to take and all that. So, they were aware of it, and it wasn't just NBA players. Of course, you had WNBA athletes speaking out. You had, of course, your NFL players who were talking about it as well. So, of course, like I said, once social lines cross the sports lines, then that kind of fits into what I'm doing with this podcast here, where I talk sports, of course, but so like I was saying, the same population of people, brought up whatever their go-to argument is when it comes to athletes speaking out. And I guess what dawned on me from it, because I actually got into a little, back and forth in the comment section with a couple of people who, said the same thing about, athletes should do their thing on their own time, stop interfering with the, flow of their sports day. Once they get into the arenas, then that kind of stuff needs to be put aside until whatever. And it feels like the more people that I kind of go back and forth with in comment sections, the more I'm starting to realize I don't think it's actually the act of the player speaking out or kneeling or putting a fist in the air or whatever. I'm starting to get the impression that with some people it's the issue of them wanting to sit in front of their TV, watch a sporting event, and act like the outside world is on pause for 2.5, 3 hours a day. And so when players start using their platform to, get their ideals out there, their point of views out there, I think for some people it kind of brings these, outside, social or political, whatever it may be, topics back into their face. And once again, certain population, it seems like they get uncomfortable dealing with that in that space of the sports arena. Because, like I said, I've gone back and forth with some people, and I could never really put my finger on what it was about kneeling during the national anthem that set some people off. I mean, the national anthem is something that doesn't get shown a lot. If it does, they don't really show the sidelines and stuff that much. If they do, it's like a quick shot, then they pull away from it. And whoever the announcer is, they may make some statement about it, but I couldn't figure out why that, which lasts like a minute and a half, really would ruin somebody's viewing experience. Didn't make sense to me. Or the NBA when they're in the bubble and they had, Black Lives Matter on the basketball court. They had messages on the back of the jerseys where it was said, Black Lives Matter or social equality or economic equality, education, that kind of stuff. All that. Once again, you found the same people having issues with it, saying, well, this is why I don't watch the sport and all this kind of stuff. Once again, couldn't figure it out. If reading something on the back of a player's jersey sets you off that much, why? What does that have to do with your viewing experience? It's not like they came out on the court, delayed the game for like 2 hours to, make some type of statement or something. Even then, I still wouldn't have a problem with it. But, you would see where some people might have a problem with that. But this is something that within the flow of the normal sporting event, they found ways to intertwine their messages. So, once again, didn't see a problem with it, but some people did. Then it was after the game when some athletes would, given the opportunity from the media people, they would talk about some of the social issues and gave you kind of a look into their mindset when talking about, like I said, whether it was George Floyd's situation or Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, the list goes on. It gave you a look into, these people weren't just athletes, but they were human beings playing a sport for a living. And once again, the population that was just like, well, this isn't the time for that. They should, if they want to do that, like, their house and social media, fine. But post-game press conferences, people didn't like that. Once again, why? And it goes down the line, and it's not even only the police brutality and all that kind of stuff. You're seeing it with some of the women athletes, WNBA or college or whatever, who have had plenty to say in terms of the Black Lives Matter stuff, as well as with like transgender rights and all that kind of stuff. And you see a lot of the population that had issues with the Black Lives Matter type talk with athletes have issues with transgender rights and all that kind of stuff. So, once again, why? And I asked why because how they can't really wrap their heads around the fact that whether it's a black athlete or even a white athlete want to speak out because they see what's happening in the news and they can connect with their black teammates on that kind of level. That's something that should be applauded. But once again, certain population, it wasn't. It was ridiculed. It was mocked by some. If you went on any YouTube video, looked at the comment section, you would see some. Sure, some of them you could say, well, they would probably say that they're just trying to troll people and get a laugh out of it. But I feel like it's much deeper than that, where, as I said before, I think it's something where instead of them wanting to be tolerant and understand where these athletes are coming from, as they're seeing people who look like members of their community being, whether it's gunned down in the street by police officers, or in George Floyd's case, an officer kneeling on his neck and him dying from that. Whatever it is. I mean, my thing, of course, I mean, I am black, so of course I can see where these athletes are coming from. But even if it were something like, if you had a group who wanted to speak out on like gun violence or whatever, like just because I don't own any guns or something, I wouldn't sit there, and because I don't have the same experience as them. If that's something they want to speak out about, I don't see where the problem is for me just sitting back listening, letting them get their 2 cents out there, and then if I disagree with it, fine, but at least understand that they have the opportunity to voice their opinion on something like that. And it always seems like it's the same group who, when the message is coming from people who may not be from the same background as them, who may not look like them, they don't seem to want to hear it. But if it's other issues that falls more in line of what they believe in, then they want to get kind of upset when people speak against that. So, like I said, I try to keep politics out of all of this. And I know that a lot of it has been politicized, because we saw that Kaepernick and all that stuff with politics getting involved and the whole message. So, so the overwhelming point is, I think if it is something where, a certain population, if they see it and they get uncomfortable by it and aren't willing to face the fact that the outside world has infiltrated into their sports viewing, then, they are more than welcome to just turn the sport off, as we've heard from some people who say they don't watch football anymore because of the whole kneeling and all that kind of stuff. Some have said that they don't watch NBA anymore because, they feel like the athletes, as was it some, I think white reporters have said, I was back kind of in the beginning of this, but there's the whole controversy behind, shut up and dribble. And, some people who have turned off the sport firmly believe in that. Hey, that's their right. So if they want to turn off the sport for that, that's on them. But I feel like all of this outrage and backlash toward these athletes for speaking their mind says more about them for being uncomfortable by it than it does for these athletes using their platform, which is well within their right, to express how they feel about what's going on in the outside world. I mean, yes, they're an athlete between that, 2.5 hour block, but when they leave that arena, they just transform into a member of society. So, I mean, they're not blind. They know what's going on, and it definitely affects them. And they have to take that onto the court, field, the ice, whatever. Play a sport, which is their job, with that on their mind. So if post-game or pre-game, them talking about it is a way for them to kind of get it off their mind and just let it go, once again, they're within their right to do that. Now, if these leagues want to tell these athletes that they can't do that, that's one thing. But as we've seen with the NBA, Adam Silver he's been fine with empowering his athletes to speak up, because he understands it's, like I said in the beginning, for a lot of these players, this is their community, or it's something that they're speaking out against because it may not be happening in their backyard, but who's to say with, I guess, kind of the way it was going, that it wouldn't be in their backyard tomorrow or the next day. They don't have to wait for something to happen to speak out against it. So that's why I give Adam Silver a lot of credit. You know, yes, they they said they weren't doing the whole Black Lives Matter stuff on the court, but I mean, they're not in the NBA bubble anymore, so I guess stuff like that would be up to individual teams anyway. And even when the NBA came out and said that they weren't going to continue that, some of the people from the same opposing population took that as a chance for them to take a victory lap, saying that Adam Silver was realizing how it was hurting the product. As I just said, I don't think that's what it was. It was just that without being in the bubble, I just feel like he was leaving that up to teams and management to make that decision on their own. And some of the players realized that just putting that on the court wasn't really going to do much to change the narrative, because they realized that in order to really enact change and get change going, they would have to speak about it. If they want to do their peaceful marches and protests, they would do that, because for them, creating the conversation is a step in a direction, and depending on kind of the members in that conversation, it could lead it towards something positive, or if people don't want to take it seriously, then it can be kind of a detriment. So say all that to kind of fast forward to the events of, well, I guess at this point it'd be yesterday, with the verdict come down, the whole George Floyd thing. The NBA came out with the Players Association, and they said that they were pleased with the verdict, but, and this is probably the biggest part of their statement, was, but they understand that the work still needs to be done. And ultimately that is the right way to look at it, because once again, I hate referring to it the same way every time, but that population who I think was sitting back and thinking that because Chauvin was found guilty or whatever, that I guess magically all of this, Black Lives Matter and protesting and kneeling and all this stuff was going to kind of stop or slow down or whatever. And I know it's not going to, as well it shouldn't, because that's just one case. There's been other examples of it. I mean, I believe we had another instance that happened maybe half an hour after the verdict came down. So the players understand, leagues understand that in order to, they understand that what happened yesterday was a step in the right direction, but it's still an issue that's got kind of like a marathon still to go. And this is kind of just like getting off the starting block. So it's not just NBA. If you go on Instagram, whatever, you'll see the individual teams putting out their own statements. You've seen, we've seen PlayStation or Sony put out statements and stuff. So, it's a topic that's not going to go away for a while, and these athletes are going to keep participating however they want to, and hopefully we don't see any of these leagues or owners try to hinder any of that. I think they've all learned their lesson, because it seemed like kind of in the beginning there was some talk about leagues and teams restricting their players, but they saw kind of the backlash from their players and people in the media, and they backed away from it back then. So I don't really see any reason for them to turn back around and try to do it again. But Like I said, having athletes speak out on stuff like that, it's definitely something that I am open to. And once again, like I said, not only in terms of this, but it's kind of whatever athletes do want to talk about should be just taken as, it's their right to speak their mind on whatever they want. Just give them their time, and then from that, you can create your own conversations and go about it that way. When you try to shut down athletes from talking, that's when people really get into trouble, because all that does is kind of perpetuate the discrimination or whatever that these athletes have been feeling for a while, and it does nothing to help the subject. So let me see if there's anything else. But yeah, so I say all that to say, like I said, it's not going away, because this is one case. There are other cases to come. Unfortunately, there's going to be more incidents, because, each cop is different. Some are out there. Naturally, when we're dealing with humans and all that kind of stuff, there's going to be people out there who will abuse their power. And when they do that, these incidents happen. So hopefully we're on a slow, progressive streak to maybe get to a point one day where this isn't something that happens every day, every hour or something like that. So, but yeah, that was just my little rant on that, and hopefully you liked it. Hopefully I didn't jump too far all over the place with it, but definitely let me know in the comment section, whether you're on YouTube or whatever platform you're listening to this on. You can always follow me on Twitter at Chompin Podcast, where not only can you hear the episodes there, but you can, of course, comment there as well. Looking ahead, I guess for the rest of this week, we had a couple of NFL players retire. Julian Edelman, Alex Smith. Now, we did have other ones retire earlier. Phillip Rivers and Drew Brees, Greg Olsen, a few others. And I feel like with them, we kind of understand that they'll most likely get into the Hall of Fame. But Julian Edelman, I definitely want to talk about him, because you're kind of seeing some who think he may get in. It may take some years, but he'll get in. And then you have others who think there's no chance he gets in. So I'm talking about that. And then Alex Smith, who I always knew that there was an outside chance he might retire. So definitely want to talk about him as well. See if he has a shot at the Hall of Fame. You never know. What else? Do want to talk about some baseball, as we are about 20 games in, I want to say. So I want to talk about I guess we're about a month in. So talk about, first month in, some observations I've seen, and kind of look at some teams who may have had surprising starts, see who I think will possibly be able to keep it going and sustain it for the rest of the year. Some who may fall back to the pack, and also some teams who may have started off slow, who I feel like will probably turn it around and get back into playoff pictures. We'll talk about that as well. What else? We have Major League Soccer season, I think, just kicked off. So I want to talk about something with Major League Soccer where one thing I've been thinking about is, can Major League Soccer follow the European model? We'll talk about that. And also in terms of soccer, this whole Super League thing, which has become a huge story past couple of days. Although now it seems like it's becoming a story for something else, because now some teams who were hell-bent on doing it are now pulling away. So talk about that as well. At some point I'm going to have to talk about Deshaun Watson. Has some interesting thoughts on that one. I mean, that story kind of came out of left field, and it has just continued to grow and have its own. I don't know. It's getting crazier and crazier by the day. Talk about that, and then, like I said, beginning of this next week, I kind of want to dedicate it all to the NFL draft. So, take a look at quarterbacks, see how I would rank the top 5, because basically the top 5 quarterbacks that people care about, and I'll even look at some of the rest that are out there who may be able to make an impact maybe as soon as next year. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll go about it with other position groups. I'm not going to touch on every position group, of course. We'll kind of group some, like quarterback will be its own, because that's always a thing. We'll do skill positions like the running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, put them all together, and offense. Yeah, so you get the point. And the draft is next Thursday is round 1. And then Friday is like round 2 and 3. And then Saturday, I think it's 4 through 7, something like that. So before next Thursday, of course, I'm going to do, like as I was talking about what I talked about in this episode, I've been thinking about it, and I'm going to go ahead and do a mock draft of the first round. So I'll definitely have to get that out there before Thursday. So I think that's kind of got you covered for next couple of weeks or so. And like I said, first time back, it's been like 2 weeks or so. Hopefully I won't have to take a break like that anytime soon. So like I said, I'm going to try to do 4 times a week, depending on work and outside stuff. We'll see, but ultimately my plan is probably to do at least like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday episode. Maybe some Mondays thrown in there, but like I said, we'll see. But I'll definitely keep you guys posted. Like I said, go over to Twitter, at Chauvin Podcast. You can find out. YouTube users, just search my name, Kyle Edwards. You'll see my YouTube channel episodes there. Got a Facebook page you can go to. Any way you can think of it, you can reach the show. So hopefully you enjoyed this one, and hopefully, with this little break, didn't lose any of you. So just come on back with me, and we'll get back into a groove and talk about all this stuff that's going on out there. So thanks again. Be safe out there, of course. God bless. And I'll catch you in the next episode. All right.